start a YouTube channel or whatever you're doing, everybody wants to get a little bit of insight into who you are as a person, as a human being. I'm not a bot. I'm not an avatar. I'm Laurelyn, and I go by Dr. LL for those of you that want to follow that moniker. Otherwise, who am I? Well, I'm your basic human being, right? I hang out in New Jersey. That's where I call home. And like so many of you, I've been navigating toxicity pretty much my entire life and just about everywhere, literally. From my days as a PhD scientist in the lab, where I got exposed to crazy levels of radiation, which of course years later culminated in a cancer diagnosis in my mid-30s. And yeah, that pretty much rocked my world. So that takes the cake on the definition of toxicity. But on the level of human being toxicity, well, I was married to a man with narcissistic personality disorder who was physically, emotionally, and financially abusive, a series of horrifying acts, which included knocking me off a very high ladder, trying to push me through a window, and ripping the newly stained mantle that I had put onto the wall right off the wall and trying to throw that at me. So yeah, that ultimately got him a restraining order, not to mention the holding me at knife point, having a gun in my face, all that sort of good stuff. Yeah, pretty toxic. So got a restraining order against him, got a divorce, but in order to escape, I lost everything. But I broke free, right? All right. As far as toxic bosses and toxic workplaces, yeah, I had those too, like everybody, right? In my first job, there was this co-founder at this startup I had joined, and he had a thing for me. He harassed me nonstop for 2 years. Literally, because he knew where I would go. Any conference I'd be at, any sales meeting, anything that I flew to, he'd be there in the lobby of the hotel. And I'd be like, what are you doing here? Eventually, I was so stressed out and wigged out that after years of inappropriate behavior, innuendo, all of the stuff, well, guess what? Yeah, I reported it to HR. He lost his job. He lost his shares in the company. His wife threw him out. And then he stalked me, get this, for another 7 years, even though I moved out of state. Yeah, twice. I'd see him parked on my street in front of my house. I'd get flowers at my new job, just completely freaky, like creepy and toxicity on a next level. Another boss, a tiny little man with short man syndrome, right? He wanted the sales commission of his entire team. So he queued us all up on these big sales, this big push, and then he shut down the entire department and let the team go, but he took all of our commissions because he was the last man standing. The only problem is when I found out that I no longer had a job, I was in Los Angeles, but I lived in New Jersey. And he waited until the end of the day after I did a 6-hour training workshop to court this very new, big client. And then at the end, as we're leaving the parking lot, I'm like, wow, that went so well, didn't it? And he reached into his briefcase and he gave me a slip and said, you're fired. You have to get home on your own. Like, oh my God, I'm in LA. So all credit cards, everything cut off with the business. That was fun. And I could go on and on, but we'll save those stories for our show, because if I know anything, I know that I'm not the only one out there with battle scars from toxic bosses, toxic workplaces, and toxic personal relationships. See you on the show, and I can't wait to hear your story. Let's figure out the next steps together.